Purged and Forgotten is the fourth full-length album from Farscape, and this is a Brazilian thrash metal band from Rio de Janeiro who generally were a big deal back in the early 2000s, and they sort of intermittently picked up this band over time after their first two records kind of caught wind of the United States scene and allowed them to tour a little bit more while they kept busy with a bunch of other projects, which maybe they're arguably better known for in terms of Whip Striker, and back in the day more people knew bands like Diabolic Force and Apocalyptic Raids. So this was a band that was notable for that era, and not so because they were participating, not so much because they had a bright idea. Their first demo is fantastic. Go listen to Doctrine Sickness, and especially if you like the Warfare Noise style splits back in the day, because this is that aggressive, or it was that aggressive style back then that touched upon kind of death metal, a little bit of thrash and black metal as it was in the late 80s. So that was a fantastic demo. And then they came out with Demon's Massacre, which was they kind of reined it in a little bit. They kind of leaned towards Creator, like a lot of bands were doing at the time, for riffs, and it meant that their style was tamed, and it only became more tame with each release. Now, I'm a big fan of all of their work, but I would admit that the record that I own of the three, Demon's Massacre, is the only one I really ever came back to more than a few times. Killers on the Loose was kind of chill, it was kind of relaxed, it was just sort of laid back, and it didn't have a point of view like you thought they would after such a lively but a little bit directionless debut. So when they came out with Primitive Blitzkrieg, it was back to by numbers thrash. They threw in a bunch more speed metal riffs, and I think that just didn't work for me because it felt like a different band than I'd been promised at the beginning. And 10 years later, it didn't seem like they were going anywhere all that stunning with it, you know. So what we get here on album number 4, 10 years after the last, is their best record yet, and I think I would say it is their most aggressive, it's their craziest, it's their maybe most kind of slipshod and just ruinous sort of thing in terms of riffs, because it is their most aggressive. They attack the rhythms harder than they ever have. There's moments of where I mention Possessed, and even the fourth Creator record, in terms of finding the riff, hooking into it, having a lot of interesting runs, and even having some melody to throw in there too. So when we get down from Backing from the Hole and Leucotomy, we see the most melodic and the most aggressive moments of the album building up in its first half. You know, this is apart from the terrible introductory first minute, which is just a lot of moaning, the first half of the record is pretty aggressive, and I really enjoyed it. So we'll stop right there while I'm getting carried away, and hook into a song here that shows us kind of where the riffs show up. So the second half of this record is where they stretch their legs a little bit, try a couple of weird things, lean into the riffs even more, write a couple of their longer songs, and the record is all the better for it. You know, the only moment that I thought was weird turned out to be a pause for a cover of a Living Death song from 1986, I think, that was weird at first, but then I realized it was just sort of a hidden track / cover, and really they kind of just nail it. And I think the last piece, A Vengeance of the Forgotten, where I call it it's side B Master of Puppets meets Volcano, 1986, the same year. And I think that is a good way to sum up how I feel about this record. Is there's a little bit of that obvious classic thrash influence all over this, but there's also a bestial or a death thrash kind of feeling to it in terms of the late 80s. It does feel like a circa 1987 Brazilian thrash metal record, and it's not afraid to get a little bit weird here and there in terms of just the asylum of it all. So I had a good time with this record. I thought it was pretty good. The only reason I gave it a moderately high recommendation is because I think they could have cut that cover at the end. It's a little bit interruptive, and I hate the introductory part of it. Otherwise, The production doesn't emphasize the guitar tone well enough, I don't think, in my opinion, and it really needed that for the album to sort of explode with as much force as they're delivering it with. It's kind of like the first Mutilation record, where it could have benefited from just a boost in that department. So go ahead and check it out. I think this is a great thrash metal record for anyone who likes thrash metal as much as I do, and it's certainly worth your time. You can read more of my thoughts in the written review, and you can go check out the album when it releases tomorrow.